It is believed that a 747 aircraft has exploded in midair about 20 miles south of New York's Long Island into the Atlantic Ocean.
On Wednesday, July 17, 1996, at 8:19 p.m., TWA Flight 800 took off from JFK Airport and headed out over Long Island towards Paris. 7 p.m., when the flight was ready to take off, one of the passengers who had checked in his baggage was not on board. Since 1988, after Pan Am 103 exploded in mid-air, killing 270 people because of a bag with a bomb who belonged to someone who never got on the plane, planes are not longer allowed to start a flight until they have checked all of the baggage belongs to someone who is on the plane. It's 28 degrees Celsius, and on the asphalt of the apron, the jumbo is getting hot. As the minutes pass by, air conditioning units under the fuselage keep the passengers cool. 15 minutes go by and there's still no sign of the mystery passenger. At 7:59 p.m., gate personnel contacts the crew.
TWA Flight 800, sorry about that delay. We have confirmation that the passenger is on board. They were on board the whole time.
8:19 p.m. The plane takes off JFK Airport. 12 minutes later, TWA 800 exploded mid-air, killing all 230 people on board. Experts believe it is possible that the fractures began underneath the plane and radiated out, tearing away part of the belly of the plane. With the bottom of the fuselage gone, new fractures raise upwards and cause the nose to turn away from the rest of the plane. Investigators find out that the fractures begin on the biggest fuel tank, the massive center wing tank. Inside the tank, they find out dents which they believe were caused by an explosion. This explosion could have been caused by the fuel it had inside, but they find out that the plane left the JFK with the center wing tank almost empty, with just 190 liters of jet fuel. This is certainly a small amount of fuel to cause an extensive damage. Even though jet fuel in liquid state is not highly flammable, when it is enclosed in a tank and heated up, it vaporizes, becoming easy to ignite. Researchers made an experiment to find if the tank's temperature could have surpassed the flash point. They make the experiment with the 747 with the same amount of fuel and with the air conditioner turned on 1 hour and 19 minutes before, which was the time the TWA flight was delayed and had the air conditioner on. With the experiment, they find out that the center wing tank is 53 degrees Celsius, a full 17 degrees past the fuel flash point. Investigators conclude what caused the fuel vapor must have been something electrical inside the fuel tank. Bob Swime, an expert at plane explosions, suspects there must have been an exposed wire in the fuel tank, but the wires inside the fuel are designed to carry a very low voltage, too low to cause a spark. Swime finds out shaped wires, wires repaired with tape and some with cracked insulation. He concludes that the state of wiring on all of the 747 could allow high voltage electricity to jump into the fuel tank wires. It could then pass to the fuel tank, causing a short circuit. The resulting spark would ignite the fuel vapor. This is only a theory, because short circuits leave no evidence, since they leave no physical trace in wiring. There are two possible theories regarding a missile. First, a terrorist attack by Afghanistan in which a missile or bomb was used, or second, a terrible accident by the US military which fired a missile and the FBI is trying to hide it. But first, let's talk about a possible terrorist
My gut
attack.
told me that this was probably an intervention by some criminal, some terrorist.
During this time, terrorist Ramzi Youssef was in the US federal court, and he was on trial for trying to blow up the World Trade Center with a 600-kilogram truck bomb. But he was also accused of masterminding a plot to kill hundreds of people with bombs planted on 12 US airplanes. As we all know, in the past, US supplied shoulder-held ground-to-air missile launches to Islamic freedom fighters in Afghanistan. Many of these weapons are in the hands of the terrorists, determined to strike America. These missiles have a range of 8 kilometers, and since Flight 800 came 13 kilometers from land, a missile from this type could have only been fired from the ocean. I believe the theory I'm about to explain is the most convincing one. I will first start with the theory and then focus on some details that justify and makes it the most credible and viable theory. During the night of the incident, there were 8 military ships, 8 submarines, and 5 military planes within 550 kilometers at the crash site. A P-3 plane and a sub were in the middle of training exercises. The missile was launched by the US Normandy, a missile cruiser which was at the sea 340 kilometers south of Long Island. Turns out the US Normandy was at least 160 kilometers beyond the range from which its missile could hit Flight 800. This is why the US believes this theory is not viable. However, that day 200 people said to FBI officials they were sure they had seen a missile hitting the plane, but the FBI never made public their testimonies. NTSB metallurgists examined the fragments under scanning electron microscopes. They looked for the distinctive micropitting, which high explosives leave on metal surfaces. FBI finds microscopic traces of RDX and PETN, which are two chemicals in explosives, such as missiles and bombs. Later, the FBI stated that 1 month before the crash, police at St. Louis hired the plane to train sniffer dogs, and they revealed that they used RDX and PETN. As well, a military exercise was being conducted the same exact day. It is possible the US military brought down TWA Flight 800 through some bizarre miscalculation. This same evening, there were classified military operations taking place just south of Long Island coast on the surface, air, and underwater. It is possible the aircraft accidentally intruded into a simulated intercept scenario. Now, why do I believe this is a real theory and the one that makes the most sense? First, I want to start off by stating the 4-year government investigation concluded that the crash was caused by an explosion in the center fuel tank. Isn't this theory too broad? How come a theory that has no physical evidence become the theory the government supports? Isn't it such a coincidence that 7 flights in the last 33 years have had fuel tank explosions and TWA 800 becomes one of them? It certainly wouldn't be such a coincidence if there were no hints on an FBI cover-up. But since we do have details that promote this theory, I will start by discussing them. I believe this is what happened to Flight TWA 800 because there are several details that enforce that the FBI is trying to cover what happened. And what else could it be covering rather than their own army made a huge mistake and took the lives of 230 people? The day of the incident, 200 witnesses stated they saw a missile heading straight toward the plane and crashing with it, but the FBI never published or communicated what these people saw. These pictures describe what many people thought they had seen. It is possible the FBI hired the CIA to make a false and staged video of how the plane crashed. The video shows how the plane broke down into 2 pieces. One of them went directly down like a bullet, and the other piece went up with a really high velocity. This video was made to justify 2 pictures that had become viral. The piece of the plane that went down like a bullet supposedly justifies this picture, and the other piece that went up justifies this picture. But what seems strange is that the video shows fast-moving roofs going up, and the Federal Aviation Administration states that when a centrifugal tank explosion takes place, it produces a low-velocity explosion. Let's say this could have happened. But why did the FBI only make public this statement from people who described seeing a fire? Fred Mayer, retired Air National Guard helicopter pilot, was flying a practice approach at Gabreski Airport near West Hamptons the night of the crash. He said he saw the explosion of 4 missiles. When he went to the East Morris Coast Guard station to give his statement, the FBI detective wrote nothing on his notepad. There are other elements that make this theory possible, such as the FBI bullying people to change their statements. As well, around July 24, 1997, the FBI mistakenly sent a fax to Riverhead resident Didi Mumo, which showed that the FBI was investigating whether pieces of debris found among the wreckage of Twa Flight 800 were the remains of an aerial target drone used by the U.S. Navy and other services in training exercises. The object shown in the fax was identified. She called the FBI when she received the first fax, and she said the agency's initial reaction was complete panic. And after the initial shock, they told her she had to send it along to them and destroy the original. She didn't do so, so the FBI threatened her with investigating her. As well, another day, an expert from the NTSB saw a structural piece of the aircraft laying on the floor with 3 holes blown through it, like a 22 through a tin can, with an obvious entrance and exit side of a hole. He was going to take a picture, and someone said, "Don't take a picture of that." Something that also caught my attention was that Hawks, a veteran government crash expert, stated FBI investigators at 3 a.m. removed parts of the plane to hide some evidence. There were people who were not authorized to do so. Last but not least, the FBI tried to cover up that materials from explosives such as PETN were found on a wing. When they finally accepted, they stated a wing had microscopic pieces of explosive materials, but they immediately backed it up, stating that St. Louis police officials had used the exact same materials to train sniffer dogs. In conclusion, I believe there are many details that make this event seem like an FBI cover-up on a horrible military missile strike mistake.